Well, hello and good morning. You guys look great. My name is Riley, and I'm the student ministries pastor, and I'm excited today to open God's Word. I hope that you are too. Now, I want to start today with a question, one that you're actually going to answer with somebody near you, so either a friend or a family member. You're going to answer the question, what is the most inspirational movie you've ever seen? Okay, now I didn't say the best movie you've ever seen. I said the most inspirational. And there are other stories like word of mouth, and there are stories that are written down. But for this particular question, I want the best movie. I'll accept documentary as well. So go with your gut reaction. I'm going to give you 1 minute on the clock, and you're going to share with somebody near you. Most inspirational movie you've ever seen. Ready? Go. It only works if you actually participate, okay? Come on, turn to a neighbor, tell them, most inspirational movie you've ever seen. Okay, it's 30 seconds, so if you haven't switched and told the most inspirational movie or why, you better switch and tell them. It's important. This is a big deal. I see some of you laughing, so I don't know if you agree or disagree with the person who's telling you. Most inspirational movie you've ever seen. All right, got 10 seconds left, so finish up. All right, good stuff. Now, I'd love to give you a chance to shout some out, but I've learned over the years that sometimes that can be a mistake because you don't know what people are going to say to you. So instead, I checked on the Googles, and it pointed me to American Film Institute's top 100 most inspirational movies of all time. I thought I'd spare you the bottom 95. I'll give you the top 5, okay? So number 5, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Don't know what that is? Me either. It's from 1939. Now, number 4, I can get down with Rocky. Okay, Rocky, that's a little bit better. Number 3, Schindler's List. Okay, number 2, To Kill a Mockingbird. And number 1, It's a Wonderful Life. Okay, somebody said that in the crowd. I love it. Now, you may or may not agree. Don't get mad at me. I'm just the messenger, but not all of us are pro-critics. So I sent a text out to people just like you and me, regular old people, and asked them the same question. Here's what I got back, all right? I got some with some spiritual flavor like War Room and God's Not Dead. I got some amazing sports movies like Miracle and Remember the Titans. I got a couple others that came in like Gladiator, The Walk, Hidden Figures. My wife may or may not have said, Aaron Brockovich, #girl power. I got a couple wild cards like Vision Quest, Up, and Nacho Libre. I'll let you decide what to do with those. Todd Hostetler's answer? The Notebook. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't say that. Or did he? We've all got stories that speak to us for different reasons and inspire us for different reasons. So whatever your answer was, doesn't matter to me because I saw a documentary last November when it came out on Netflix that has been rocking my world, and I think it tops all of these. It's a documentary called 14 Peaks, and the tagline, nothing is impossible, and it is epic. Now, if you haven't seen it, I want to give a fair warning and a small disclaimer before you go home and watch it as a family. There's some stuff that might not be appropriate for everybody. There's a little bit of language and stuff like that, so I'm not suggesting that you go home and you go, well, the youth pastor said, so I can say it. Parents, check it out first. Decide if it's for your whole family, okay? Fair warning? We good? All right, I'm going to keep going. Let me give you the basics of the story, all right? In the entire world, you may or may not know this, there are 14 mountain peaks that reach over 8,000 meters in height. You've probably heard of Mount Everest, right? The highest of all of them, but there are 13 others that reach a height over 8K. Now, there are people who have summited all 14 in their life. According to people who have chronicled their mountaineering, 44 people have reached the summit of all 8,000 meter peaks. The record for summiting all 14, so the first time you do one all the way through until you summit the last one, just over 7 years. So in 2019, this man, who's a part of the British Special Forces, but he's born in Nepal, named Nims Purja, gets an idea, something he wants to call Project Possible. And he says that he's going to gather a team and summit all 14 of these peaks. He said he wants to show people how you can come from nothing, but through hard work, dedication, commitment, training, anything is possible. So with this vision in mind, Nims and his team blows the old record of 7 years out of the water. My friends, they did it in just under 7 months. In 6 months and 6 days, he summits all 14 of these 8,000 plus meter peaks. Now, clearly, there's like the physical toll, right? Like, how could your body hold up to that? How does somebody get that strong? How can they make that happen? But there's more to it than that. How do you fund a project like this? It's crazy. You need permits that are hard to get sometimes. You need gear. There's so much planning that goes into it. The weather has to cooperate. It's really dangerous. It should be impossible, but as Nims reminds us, nothing is impossible. And as I've watched this and thought about it, I have a lot of questions that run through my mind. I mean, first of all, like, how does something like this happen in the first place? How do you dream this big? How do you have a vision like this? How does a human go from just being a regular person to having this sort of an idea about something that they could accomplish in this life? How do you train that hard? How does the ordinary become extraordinary? But the question, if you dig down, is actually a little smaller than that. I want to know what kinds of things shape somebody who's just a normal guy into this sort of superhuman who accomplishes a feat like this. I mean, is it just that he was born like this? Or is there more to it than that? Is it just nature, or is there some nurture involved as well? If you dig even deeper, the question actually becomes, how do we change? How do we grow, period? Because when I look at Nims and when I look at his story, there's no way that he just woke up and bang, summited all 14 peaks. He has things that happen throughout his life that mold him and shape him into being a person that does something like this. I've heard it said that people don't really change much over their life. You kind of are who you are. And that's just the way it is. Can that be true? I mean, that we just are who we are and maybe we can't, won't change much in this life? I've also heard others say that there's a ton of change that actually happens in this life. Man, you should meet that person. They're completely different than they were, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. So which is true? Can people actually change or can't they? If it's true that they can change, how does that change actually happen? Maybe like me, you've thought about this. Is it possible for people to change? If so, how do they do it? Because to be honest with you guys, some days I feel like waking up, getting to work, being a fairly engaged dad for my 3 kids, and trying to be the best husband I can be is the only project that is possible. And some days, I don't know, it feels like it's altogether impossible. Forget about doing something extraordinary. I'm just trying to do my best. Maybe for you, you're not trying to climb a mountain, but you're trying to make a change. Maybe you've never fought in a war, but maybe you have. Maybe you're fighting a different battle. Maybe like me, you're doing your best to become a better parent or a better spouse, a godly parent, a godly spouse. Maybe you're struggling in relationships with a coworker or a boss or a family member. Maybe for you, you're going through some mental health battles that just never stop coming at you. They feel totally out of your control. Maybe it's an addiction that you battle every single day, and that feels like a war of its own. You see, we get to these points in our life where we feel stuck and we need breakthrough. We feel like we don't know which way to go, where do I turn, and we feel like in these moments we need something extraordinary to break in and help us change. What do we do and where do we go in moments like these? Is change possible? And if so, how does it happen? And it's at this point I want to bring us back into the story we've been reading over the past 4 weeks. We're in week 5 of our series Dreamer, where we've been studying the life of Joseph. And there's a lot of things when you do a 6-week series that, man, it's just like, so I want to try to recap and get us to the same point. So if you're here first week, or this is your 4th week, 5th week, whatever, I want to catch us up to speed and then move forward. So we've been looking at Joseph's life and the dreams that God gave him and what that can teach us about how we want to live our lives. Remember that Joseph has been through a ton of ups and downs to this point. You see, Joseph follows God, he does what God asks, and then things go bad for him. As my 3-year-old daughters like to say, he gets thrown in a hole and they take his rainbow coat away. But Joseph, even in that, being hated by his brothers, being disowned and thrown to the side, stays faithful to God. What he's met with is being sold as a slave. And still there, he stays faithful to God. And then he gets propositioned by a woman in authority over him to sleep with her. And he says no, because that's not God's best for his life. And even in that, it's followed up by hard times. She lies about him. He loses his job. He goes to prison. And somehow, even there, he stays faithful to God. Joseph goes from blessings to brokenness, and the way that I read his story is one of complete and utter confusion. Because where I come from, you earn stuff. You work hard, you get paid. You stay faithful, you be blessed. That's what God should do. You get what you earn. You get what you've got coming to you. Maybe I would call that fairness. But it doesn't always seem like God really cares much about what I think he should do and the way I think he should go about things. So, here we go with more of Joseph's story. He has this dream about ruling over his brothers. We read that about on week 1. We've been talking about it ever since. And maybe foolishly, he kind of tells his brothers in what seems to be kind of like an ignorant or sort of braggy sort of way, right? You're going to bow down to me. And then he goes through all of this pain that I just told you about. And now I'm skipping ahead in the story. But eventually he's charged to interpret a dream of Pharaoh. And he does that. Pharaoh realizes that he's really wise. Like, I got to put this guy in charge of something. And God has gifted him, so I'm going to do this. So he puts him in charge of all this land. Then there's a huge famine in the land. And Joseph's family, back where he's from, is starving. So they send his brothers out to get some food. These brothers have to go and talk to the powers that be to get food, gather food. And wouldn't you know it, because of his newly appointed position, the person that they come face to face with when they have to ask for this food is their brother. They come to Joseph, but because they haven't seen him in so long, they don't realize that it's him, but he knows that it's them. So they come to him, they want to buy food, and it's in this moment that they're begging, like, hey, we need this food, can you help us out? And Joseph is looking at them, and he has this opportunity to get even for all of the hurt and all of the pain and more than we just read about. All these evil things that Joseph has gone through, seemingly at these brothers' poor decision to sell him as a slave. And when I read this story, I get to this point and I think Joseph is about to get them. They're going to get it. He's going to let them have it. They've earned some retribution for their ways. Joseph has earned a little bit of payback, I'd say, for the hurt that they've caused. But the way that Joseph responds might be a little bit different than what you or what I might do in this moment. And I think it can teach us a lot about change that's possible in our life. And it's in this moment that we're going to pick up the story. Joseph, with his brothers at his mercy, can do whatever he wants to get even. So we're going to read from Genesis 45. If you got a Bible, you can open it up. We're going to be in verse 1 through 15. If you don't, you can look up here. Genesis 45, 1 through 15. Here's what it says. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all of his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they'd done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there's been famine in the land, And for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Now hurry back and tell my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly. Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him, weeping. And he kissed all of his brothers and wept all over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him. Now, I'm floored by this response. Maybe you caught it. If you were Joseph, you had the opportunity I just set up to get even, what would you do? All this hurt and all this pain that's happened in your life and the people that caused it, you have the authority to pay them back for all that they've done for you. And I don't want to assume that I would choose the wrong way, but I would be tempted, if I were Joseph, to let him have it. If I'm him, I'm thinking they ruined my life and now they're going to pay. And in fairness, we're skipping over some things where it seems like Joseph is working this out in his own life, like has him bow down, throws him into prison. But man, he's got so much opportunity to let them really pay for what they've done. But he stops short. He doesn't go as far as I probably would have. He chooses a different path. And I want to know, how do you get to this place in life? Because I do believe that change is possible in our lives and in every person's life. If you think back with me, early on in Joseph's life, he's a guy with no authority and no humility. When he gets that dream from God, he's 17 years old, right? Just a young kid. And he spouts off this dream, telling everybody about it, seemingly without a lot of authority to tell them this. And he doesn't seem like he has a lot of humility in the way that he shares it either. Gets that dream from God, shouts it out, lets the words just kind of go where they may. And now things have changed. He's gone through all this stuff in life, and all of a sudden where we read today, Joseph has nearly unlimited authority. The Bible calls him Lord of the land, appointed by Pharaoh himself. He could have done whatever he wanted to get even with his brothers, but he chooses to humble himself and forgives them, even claiming that it was God's plan to allow him to go through all that horrible stuff to accomplish God's purposes. Joseph chooses forgiveness over revenge. It seems like the world could learn a thing or two about how to live by looking at Joseph's story. Sometimes I wonder if God gives us dreams in our lives. He gives us an image of what could be, what following him could be like, and then inevitably what happens is we're going along, we're doing our best to follow God, and then something happens. Somebody does something to us. Somebody hurts us. And we choose in that moment to stay unforgiving. And it's like we see God's dream for us out there. We want to pursue it, but unforgiveness, it holds us captive. It's like quicksand. We can't get through it. We can't move towards God's dream for us because we can't forgive. We're stuck. You see, Joseph goes from no authority and no humility to all authority and all humility. You see the change that's happened in his life? Maybe today God will invite you to choose forgiveness. Maybe today's the day that you're going to forgive that person. Maybe today's the day that you could forgive God. Maybe today's the day that you could choose to forgive yourself. But my question remains, how? How do you get there? How does he get there? How does he go from this ordinary guy to having such an extraordinary change happen in his life? How can this kind of change happen in your life, and how can it happen in my life? Here's my answer. Don't miss it. I don't know if you're going to love it because I don't really know if I love it. My answer is pressure. pressure. And by pressure, I mean those hard, challenging things in our lives that honestly we would rather avoid. It could be, it's not limited to, like strained relationships, internal battles and struggles, challenges we face in life, like maybe health struggles or challenges. You see, I believe that God allows pressure in our life to bring about progress in our faith. God will allow challenge to bring about change. He'll allow struggle in your life to show you that He's really the only one that can save you. We learn this from Joseph, that because God is always with us, we can face anything that comes our way. We don't have to be afraid, and we can trust that God's going to use it for good. Now, I want to be careful to say that I don't believe that God forces these bad things to happen. Like, God is not the author of evil, but He will allow things to happen. Like Romans 8:28 says, that we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. When I think about Joseph's life, I think about how it would have changed, where he would have ended up if he never got put in that well in the first place. What if Joseph wouldn't have been hated by his brothers? What if he wasn't sold into slavery? What if he never ended up being lied about, fired, thrown in prison? What if he wouldn't have been forgotten about by the cupbearer? These seem like some of the most lonely times and lonely things that I could imagine in life, but I wonder if Joseph wouldn't have felt totally alone if he ever would have really understood what it meant that God was always with him. If he was comfortable, would he have ever seen God's hand at work in his life? Joseph sees that pain, his pain, is only a part of the dream that God has for him, that He wants to bring about. And that in walking through this path of difficulty, God actually provides for His family. God can use the ugly things in our life to bring about His purposes. Dreams can find a way, and dreams don't die if we will persevere through the problems we face, through the pressure and through the pain. I want to encourage you today, if you're here, if you're online, do not quit following God just because it's hard. Don't believe that just because everything around you may be hard and it may be bad, that God is He's still good. It may not make sense to you, but it is true. He's never left your side. You know, the title of this series is called Dreamer. But when we say dreamer, this isn't some sort of fairy tale dreamland, some prosperity gospel where we say like, hey, if you just stay faithful, you're going to get everything you ever wished for. You're going to make a lot of money, some American dream dressed up like the gospel. This dreamer is the kind of grind it out, stick with it no matter what, because God promises that He is with you sort of dream. It's a kind of faith worth having. One that stands up not only when everything is good in your life, but when everything is not good, like in Joseph's life. You guys, we're 2 months away from Christmas, and that's a time where we celebrate that Jesus came to be with us, His birth and His arrival. We celebrate that God came to be with us, that He took on flesh, and He promised that in this life, even though it can be filled with pain, our God came into our mess and promised that He's not going anywhere. When you feel alone, God promises, I am with you. Without pressure, Saul would have never become Paul. Without a struggle, Jesus doesn't go to the cross. One where in this struggle He says, God, will you take away the pain? I don't want to go to the cross. But He submits to God. And in so doing, He provides a way to God that we couldn't have made for ourselves. Without challenge in your life, you'll never become the person God intended you to be. He will bring beauty from ashes. It's what He does. Are you allowing your struggle, whatever it is, to draw you near to God, or is it pulling you away? Because that is your choice. Seems like Joseph has trusted that even in the pressure, there can be progress. Likewise, you may be in a struggle right now, but I want to remind you that your story is in God's hands. He's doing things that you cannot see in this moment. But if there's anything I believe about God, it's that He is good. It's in His nature. He cannot ever not be good. Even in the midst of the worst times in our lives, Joseph knew that, and we can too. I want to encourage you today to look up out of your struggle, your challenge, whatever it may be, and see that God is there. He's with you. He's never left your side. If we could be a people who believe this, that in the hardest times that God is with us and He's using these hard things for good, I think God could do something amazing in our midst. What if our problems actually had a purpose? What if in the pressure there was progress available? Maybe it would change our view of what's going on in the world entirely. Maybe when we think about things like COVID, we wouldn't get down about like the church that we lost or the way the church has changed, but we would look forward into the future that God has for the church. With all the pain that COVID has caused, I cannot wait to see what God is going to do through His church next. I want to challenge you to press in. Don't sit back. And as I think about this message and as I've prayed about it, I can't help but think about Jesus' words about He's the potter and that we're the clay. Maybe it's why, He talks about how through pressure-filled times, He can shape us and He can mold us. Now, we do have a choice on whether or not we get off the wheel, but let's say that we don't. We stay with God. Through these pressure-filled moments, I believe that God can allow us to become something beautiful. Something He'll allow us to, show who God is to the world around us. That when we submit to His ways, even in all situations, the pressure-filled, more difficult than you could imagine ones, He will use them for His good. But I didn't say you wouldn't feel dizzy, and I didn't say it would be easy or comfortable. So this week, as you go throughout your week, I want to give you a challenge that's really simple in presentation, but it's really hard in practice. This week, when you want to run from pressure, don't. Don't run away. Run toward it. This week, when you want to avoid that person or that situation that's painful and hard, remember that without pressure, there's no progress. And recognize that God is with you and you can be faithful through it. Remember that Joseph is changed by God through these experiences, going from a guy with no authority and no humility to all authority and all humility, choosing forgiveness when he could have had revenge. And in doing that, God took something ordinary, made it extraordinary, and He can do the same thing in your life. So here's what I want to do. The band's up here. They're about to play a song, and we're going to have like a moment where you sit with the Lord. And what I want you to do right now is imagine when I say pressure, when I say challenge, when I say struggle, I want you to just stop and imagine what that is in your life right now. It could be a person. Could be an addiction that you're battling. It could be anything. I don't know what it is, but these things that you would rather avoid. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to deal with that. I want to push it to the side. What is that in your life? You got it? Is it in your mind? Do you know what it is? We're about to play this song. And while we play it, I just want you to sit. And in sort of like a prayerful posture, I want you to imagine that thing right in front of you. I want you to imagine God is sitting in front of you, and I want you to imagine what it would be like to submit that to God and ask Him what He's trying to teach you in it. God, what are you trying to teach me? I believe that in the pressure there's progress available. Show me what you're trying to teach me. I want to learn. And in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to come back and I'm going to close this out. So this time is yours to sit with the Lord and to put that thing, that struggle, that challenge, that pressure in front of Him. Ask Him what He's trying to teach you. I'll be back in just a minute.
Before breath when I doubt it. Lord, remind me I'm wonderfully made. You're an artist and a potter. I'm the canvas and the clay. You make all things work together for my future and for my good. You make all things work together for your glory and for your name. There's a healing light just beyond the clouds. Though I've walked through fire, I see it clearly now. I know nothing has been wasted, no failure or mistake. You're an artist and a potter. I'm the canvas and the clay. You make all things work together for my future and for my good. You make all things work together for your glory and for your name. You make all things work together for my future and for your good. You make all things work together for your glory and for your name.
All right, you can keep your heads bowed. I just want to talk to you guys in the room and those of you online, and we're going to close out in just a minute. And here's what I want to do. I just want to say, like, almost 13 years ago in my life was probably the worst and the darkest time I honestly could like stir up and I could imagine. It was just filled with like anxiety and depression. I was completely lost. I had no relationship with God, and I didn't really want one. But God, in His goodness, reached out to me, gave me an opportunity to change my path and to say yes to walking with Him. And as I've been praying, as I've been thinking about this morning, I just can't help but believe that somebody in the room's got that going on. Somebody online has that going on. And I want to give you guys an opportunity, those of you who've been going through it, man, you've been in a battle. Maybe that God's allowing you, like, maybe He's allowing you to hit rock bottom to realize, like, He's the only rock at the bottom. Like, there's nowhere else to go. And I wouldn't trade that dark and hard time in my life for anything. It changed everything for me. Gave me an opportunity to say yes to Jesus, to repent of my sins and to turn towards God, to let Him shape me and change me. I believe He wants to do that for somebody here today. So I want everybody in the crowd to just bow your heads. I want to pray for you. Holy Spirit, I pray that you would speak in these moments. Stir up faith like only you can do. If you're in the room and you're like, man, I've been going through it. It's been hard. It's been a challenge. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. Maybe, just maybe, God's been setting you up to say yes today. I just want to ask you, if you're in the room, you've never made a decision to follow Jesus, but today's the day. You're like, fine, God, I'll let you change me. I don't know what that means a week from now or a month from now, but I know that my way is not really going so good. If that's you and you're like, I just want to, like, you're talking about following Jesus, I want to do that. I just want you to shoot your hand up in the room, and I would love a chance to pray for you. If you'd say, this is my day, I want to follow Jesus, just shoot your hand up. Let me pray for you. Yes. If there's anybody online that you're like, today is my day, I want to follow Jesus. I want to make him Lord of my life. Just put Jesus in the chat. We'll know what that means. We'll follow up with you. If there's anybody else in the room that would say, today's the day, yeah, I want to follow Jesus, I see you. Today is the day of salvation for you. Yes, I see you too. Wow. I want to pray for you guys. Jesus, thank you. Thank you that on weeks where there's so much going on and like so many people gone, there's so many people at Hope Water, there's so many things going on for Daybreak that's like spreading us out and we're all over the place, that still your Spirit speaks. I'm so thankful for it. I'm thankful for these people that have said yes to you this morning. I remember that day for me, and I know it mattered. It changed everything for me. And so I pray for these people that have been bold enough and brave enough to say yes to you, Jesus. I pray that you would just spur them on in their faith, that when they don't know where to turn, you'd give them wisdom. You make them strong. You'd reassure them, God, when they leave this place and when the enemy wants to throw doubt on them, that they would remember the decision that they made today. That you're actually changing them. You love them. They are your children. We praise you for it. Jesus, help Daybreak stay a church that is so committed to those who are lost, those who want to find Jesus and walk with him, because you really can change their life. And so, Father, I pray for them and the others that will be like them, that will come to this place and we will go out and share. Help us to do that well. For those in the room that instead of today being the day of salvation, it was just the day where they said, please change me, Jesus. I pray for those that need to forgive that person. I pray for those that need to forgive you, God, for not acting the way they think you should. Forgive me for that. And for those that need to forgive themselves. You are forgiven in Jesus' name. God, thank you for the reminder that we need so often in our lives. We praise you for this morning. Thanks for doing what only you can do. We love you, Jesus. Amen. Hey, I just want to say thank you guys for being here. I hope you're encouraged that your problems can really be used for progress in your faith. I hope you'll be here next week as we close out our series, Dreamer. It's going to be awesome. So, blessings to you. You guys are dismissed.